My name is Rozalina Gutman, and my presentation for ISME Research Commission at the 35th World Conference for International Society for Music Education is a special delight. It's a great opportunity to join discourse among the top music educators and researchers from all over the world, gathering into multinational family. Because of time constraints, I will present only short summary today of the urgent multidisciplinary global implications from my findings of observational study on discovery of Bach's sensory deactivation effect. My next slide invites my audience to focus on global significance and the hope brought by multidisciplinary lessons for neuroscientists and the rest of us from convict Johann Sebastian Bach on his high efficacy counterpoint to sensory shutdown, the root cause of fast approaching global infertility crisis forecasted to onset as soon as by 2045 by over 60 fertility studies. This global fertility crisis has been tracked and announced by fertility researchers since the 90s, but this inconvenient truth does not appear inconvenient enough to most people and leadership, despite the urgency. Fortunately, there is tangible hope for overcoming this paralysis and apathy. It's Bach's innovative, for his time and ours, 300-year solution for the previously unrecognized root cause of this crisis, sensory shutdown. And in this particular case, it is sensory shutdown of pain alarm to chemical hazards around us. Bach's lifelong rebellion to use music as sensory reawakening counterpoint to sensory oblivion was in great contradiction with his time's music conventions. And retaliation with false imprisonment did not weaken, but instead fired up his defiant commitment of genius composer with the mindset of music therapist and neuroscientist. His commitment to use music as joyful transformative force. And yet, today during our time, his music legacy still needs liberation from still dominant and yet false educational standard for emotional repression based on biographical distortion. My next slide invites and calls to face facts about fast nearing indiscriminate global infertility crisis that is no longer optional, because generation of grandchildren of today's adults will have hard time having children due to plummeting of sperm counts at today's rapid rate of 1% per year. This shocking data should have left to no business as usual in all parts of society, including music, and of course including strategic planning to stop ever-increasing cumulative impact of hazardous chemicals by urgent restructuring of production of most of man-made products that off-gas with toxicity, causing indoors air pollution resulting from irrelevant standards for health and safety. The root cause of our spiraling down into human extinction is paradoxical. Majority of population no longer feel pain alarm to normalized and illegally legalized hazardous chemicals, contrary to rapid pain alarm instinct that instantly makes us pull away from fire. Today, no time is left to let false priorities continue deepening omnipresent, already widespread multi-generational zombieization, and visionary books 12,000 Canaries Can't Be Wrong by Dr. Mollett, dedicated to environmental illness of his thousands of patients, and another book, Countdown, by visionary researcher Dr. Swan, call for urgent action. My next slide is about hope. Hope from embodied by music, tangible evidence for intangible aspect of unconscious mind that was finally made visible and was discovered. Fortunately, similar type of elusive sensory shutdown became visibly evident in my observational study on sociosomatics of collectively practiced interpretive error based on compilation of recordings of obscured Bach's fugue-parody. And these paradoxes propelled my sharing of qualitative research, observational study that was based in stage 1 on empirical self-analysis of sociosomatics of the process of recovering from my own interpretive error of Bach's music. And then it followed with stage 2, the analysis of the compilations of erroneous recordings of Bach's emotionally demanding music performed by many various famous pianists, forced to withhold emotions by the false educational standard, paradoxically requiring replication of dynamically limited harpsichord on capable of nuances piano. Indeed, paradoxical. Bach's music reflected tangible evidence of otherwise elusive phenomenon of the human brain that is at the core of variety of cognitive malfunctions resulting from sensory shutdown that disrupts interhemispheric balance. And according to my study evidence, even many musicians who are in the last line of defense from dangerous zombieization are yet to become conscious about their detachment from their senses and their need to address confusion of their key priorities in order to regain resonance with their audience's yearning for emotional reawakening. My next slide is dedicated to the sneak preview into anatomy of my discovery process. Through empirical self-reflection analysis in stage 1, I came to realize that my discovery started manifesting when everything in my life collapsed. And fortunately, music was the only but very effective healing resource to sustain my life in the face of cruel and sinister retaliation to sadly having more knowledge about my under-researched, at the time absolutely unresearched, women-specific heart attack that my doctors and first responders did not know about at all in most of the cases. For example, I was banned from cardiology care by Kaiser Hospital system that suddenly canceled also my insurance coverage with no explanation following my mere request to refer me to cardiologist Dr. Barry Mertz, the visionary co-founder of pioneering at the time subject Barbara Streisand Women Heart Center that was co-founded by visionary woman of our time, Barbara Streisand. This Kaiser's betrayal was increasingly traumatic. But I admit that my living each day as if it was my last day led me to my artistic liberation. That is when my heart pain made it intolerable to withhold emotional expression in Bach, since that was contrary to the nature of his music and any music in general. And when I gave myself permission to follow my intuition and began hearing and seeing the real and most obvious, intensely nuanced essence of his polyphony that I had been missing during prior decades, like most of musicians. Analytically and emotionally balanced engagement with Bach rewarded my daring with polyphonic version of many complexities. It allowed me the renewed vision of aspects of our reality that were hidden and obscured from my perception, including vicious circle of compound trauma that clouds the clarity of perception as a prism of trauma. Cruelty blinded medics to cause harm to me while also forcing them to practice self-defeat, as if they could not grasp that number one cause of death in women does not discriminate, but instead it threatens them and their loved ones as much as it threatened me. Bach's sensory deactivation effect provides pathways to repatterning this type of blind spots. Of course, skeptics may think that finding error in iconic recordings of Bach and related musicological analysis is as impossible as finding an error is in the table of multiplication. But I found the written proof for my intuitive defiance to emotional repression that led to my discoveries. And I present below under publicized sale receipt signed by Bach personally that verifies his sale of piano E forte that was distinctly different clavier with hammer action and with diverse nuances capacity, unlike harpsichord. And it is also known that Bach contributed on a number of occasions his improvements to the design of this instrument while being in intimate contact with its maker, Mr. Silbermann. This underpublicized signed by Bach's hand receipt for selling piano E forte officially permits to enjoy his music to the fullest. And I present translation from German by esteemed bilingual musicologist and researcher Eva Badura Skoda, who did not live long enough to witness this moment of her contribution of research, helping to pronounce and to frame Bach sensory deactivation effect. My next slide continues the preview about how this cascade of discoveries started with unearthing of hilarity of Bach's fugue-parody that was assigned to me at first during my teenage years at the age of 14 for college entrance exam by my teacher. I studied diligently and copied interpretation of textbook-like recordings of famous pianists, anything that was available at the time. And adjudicators rewarded my performance with the top grade, allowing me to pass through very competitive college selection. So upon my recent intuitive rediscovery of this piece, I wanted to review these old recordings again. And along with familiar since youth recordings, my YouTube search also brought more recent video recordings at this time, all with the same error spreading like social virus. And that led me to another epiphany and opened up stage 2 in my process of discovery. I understood that social influences are at play, similarly to collective blind spot that was described by Anderson in his fairy tale Emperor's New Clothes, or Naked Emperor. Except my findings were no longer fictional. I found the real and rarely available evidence for the hard-to-grasp, elusive aspect of unconscious mind that is the root cause of various mental malfunctions resulting from interhemispheric imbalance caused by sensory shutdown. Recordings by pianists in both Group 1 Golden Era of Pianism and Group 2 Analytically Minded Pianists, who actually offered verbal analysis of various nuances of this piece in addition to performance. Both subjects of both groups demonstrated localized shutdown of eyesight and hearing senses that prevented them from identifying and bringing out hard-to-miss, fun-provoking dissonant sonorities left unresolved and emboldened with syncopation by composer, who deliberately used these dissonant sonorities in defiance of very strict ban on such dissonance during his time. And today, this discovery offers musicians a special reason to appeal to their fans, to help raise urgent awareness about the need in our society for sensory reawakening among all members of our society in order to help prevent human extinction, no less, during current countdown to 2045 that has not been recognized and publicized enough. My next slide invites attention to very important subject of evolutionary origins of this subliminal process of sensory shutdown so widespread among our society. I want to invite you to picture birds gathering in murmurations, preparing for their long journey to their migratory destination. When birds migrate for survival reasons, they shut down individual senses and freedoms in order to become nuts and bolts of collective flock mind. This flocking instinct makes us repress our personal senses and feelings in order to fit into collective expectations, at times at the cost of personal harm. That is why when children feel pain from chemical hazards, they learn to shut down their pain alarms by internalizing adult sensory oblivion that is serving as example for them to follow, and children learn the best by example. Implicit pressure of collective fascination with techno gadgets forced human race into multi-generational shutdown of the sense of pain alarms to hazardous materials they are often made of. As the result, while being unaware of practicing sensory complicity, consumers are no longer able to identify hazardous products, while their cumulative effects remain indiscriminate and affect us in various vulnerable areas of our health. In the conclusion, I want to present my next slide that points attention that through his powerful music, Johann Sebastian Bach, the fifth evangelist, is calling upon each of millions of his fans to join his laughter, to scorn cruel inertia and mind paralysis of those who practice excusiology for notorious resentment to change. Will 300-year-old overdue apology to embattled artivist Bach, to humanity, and to all musicians finally manifest into compliance with this research on the critical role of music education for all? Will the value and priority for Bach's strategies of harnessing music instinct for brain function optimization finally rise among the leaders of the society, at least now, when social somatics featured and reflected through Bach's sensory deactivation effect were finally made to be easy to grasp? I'd like to conclude on this note and thank you for your attention and invite your comments, questions, feedback, and especially proposals and ideas for research, maybe collaborative research that may be influenced by this recent discovery of Bach's sensory deactivation effect that has textbook changing implications in both brain sciences and throughout the all realms in our society. Thank you very much. Please get in touch with me through charismafoundation.org and direct email volunteers@charismafoundation.org, where charisma is spelled with CH.